My father's sudden hospitalization pulled me back to our family home, disrupting the life I'd built elsewhere. But upon my return 2 months later, I was greeted not by my husband but by a stranger. Stunned and disoriented, I struggled to comprehend the surreal scene unfolding before me. Who was this woman invading my space, and why was she here? Then my husband materialized, delivering a bombshell I never saw coming. "We've been divorced for 2 months," he announced coolly, adding insult to injury by revealing his plans to sell our home and claim the proceeds as alimony. Anger surged within me, boiling over at his callousness and self-interest. As his words sank in, a fierce determination ignited within me. "You have no idea what's coming," I seethed silently, vowing to reclaim control of my life. I'm Kathy, aged 42, and it's been 3 tumultuous years since I hurried into marriage on the cusp of 40. The once blazing flame of our love has dimmed to a mere flicker, overshadowed by the drastic changes in my husband, Bob, once the epitome of kindness. His transformation is staggering, leaving me yearning to scream out my frustration to the world. Just leave him, right? You might assume it's that simple, but for me, it's far more complicated. There's a reason I can't bring myself to walk away. My father, living alone back home, I can't bear the thought of burdening him with worry. My mother passed away before I even found love, let alone marriage, depriving her of the joy of grandchildren. Saying my final goodbyes to my mother without any significant news to share left a lasting mark on me. I couldn't bear to add to my father's concerns. Divorce isn't just about me, it's about sparing him unnecessary pain. Besides, I'm not particularly attractive or outgoing. Who would want a divorced woman in her 40s? If I end things, it's game over. So I resign myself to endure, repeating this mantra to quell any thoughts of leaving. Despite both my husband and I being full-time employees with similar incomes and work schedules, he acts as though he's the sole provider of our lifestyle. From the beginning of our marriage, he's assumed the role of the master of the house. "Where's my dinner? Why isn't it ready?" he demands upon my arrival home. "I've just walked in too. If you're hungry, why not help out?" I respond. "Why should I, a man, have to pitch in? Who do you think affords this lifestyle?" he retorts. Using gender as an excuse? That's outdated. Are people still making such chauvinistic remarks these days? I find myself constantly at odds with my husband, Bob, unable to contain my frustration. His responses to me are consistently patronizing, and this cycle has persisted for about a year now, with Bob's attitude only deteriorating. I've long ceased yearning for the way things used to be between us. To minimize our time together, I make a concerted effort to stay out on weekends and take breaks whenever possible. Being home with Bob, even on my days off, feels stifling. Thankfully, as long as I keep up with the housework, Bob remains silent on that front, a small silver lining in my unfortunate situation. Lately, I've taken to spending my days off exploring various cafes I've researched during the week, finding solace in their ambience and losing myself in books. Bob's been arriving home late on Fridays lately, seemingly burdened with tasks tied to his recent promotion. Capitalizing on the opportunity, I decided to take a detour on my way home from work that Friday. I stopped at the library to borrow some fresh reads for the weekend and swung by the supermarket to replenish our dwindling food supplies. With Bob likely still at work, I took my time browsing the aisles before finally heading home. However, upon my arrival, I was greeted by the unexpected sight of Bob lounging on the couch, jacket discarded and engrossed in the television. His blatant laziness drew an exasperated sigh from me. Catching sight of me, he grumbled, "Hurry up and get dinner ready. How long do you expect me to wait? It's unusual to find you home on a Friday. I thought you'd be working late. Work finished early today. Now, get dinner on the table and run my bath." Suppressing my irritation, I made my way to the kitchen. As I worked on dinner, I took breaks to tidy up the bathroom. Just as the meal was nearing completion, my phone rang, cutting through the noise of the television and drawing a frown from Bob. Without a word, he shot me a pointed glare, silently urging me to answer quickly. With a sense of urgency, I answered the call to hear a doctor on the other end informing me that my father had been rushed to the hospital. He requested my presence for a discussion on his condition. "I'm on my way," I assured the doctor, even as Bob, still fixated on the TV, grumbled indistinctly. "Hey, what about dinner?" he interjected. "My dad's been hospitalized. I need to go," I replied, incredulous at his lack of concern. "What about my dinner?" he persisted. His disregard for my father's situation was infuriating. "For once, can you handle things on your own?" "Dinner's ready. Help yourself," I retorted, unable to conceal my frustration. Frustrated beyond measure, I couldn't contain my anger, and he responded with a burst of fury, his veins visibly pulsating. What's with the attitude? Just because he's in the hospital doesn't mean you have to make such a scene. You're married to me. Your priorities should lie with your husband, not your father, he spat out angrily. His words left me speechless, but the urgency of the situation at the hospital took precedence. There was no time to argue with someone so unreasonable. I slammed a plate down in front of my disgruntled husband. Please take care of the dishes, I instructed tersely before hastily making my exit from the house. Upon reaching the hospital, I found my father lying in bed, his face bearing the marks of weariness I hadn't seen before. Despite his reassurances over the phone, it struck me that he might be struggling with loneliness in his solitary existence, bereft of my mother's presence. His diet and well-being were likely not as balanced as he claimed. I chided myself for naively accepting his words at face value. My father was not one to easily admit vulnerability. How could I have overlooked this? Lost in self-reproach, I was summoned by a nurse for an update on my father's condition. Led to another room, I awaited the attending physician's explanation. The doctor revealed that my father had slipped and fallen on the stairs at the train station, resulting in a fractured leg that would require considerable time to heal. Do you have someone who can bring him necessities during his stay? The doctor inquired. It varies. Rehabilitation will be challenging, I responded. If possible, frequent visits would be beneficial, urged the doctor. Understood. I'll be here every day, I vowed, resolute in my decision. With the doctor's guidance, I resolved to stay at my parents' home during my father's hospitalization, a 2-hour journey each way from my own residence. Daily visits would be taxing, but commuting from my childhood home would make it more manageable. It was time to make the necessary arrangements. Leaving the hospital while my father rested, I returned home around noon on Saturday. My husband was nowhere to be seen, but he arrived later in the evening. I wasted no time in briefing him on the situation. I'll need to go back to my parents' house to care for my father, I explained. Predictably, his reaction wasn't favorable. Who will take care of me then? He grumbled. You're a capable adult. Can't you manage your own affairs? Even amidst your father-in-law's struggles, your concern remains solely on yourself. Can't you show a little cooperation? I shot back, exasperated. That's preposterous. It's only natural for a wife to tend to her husband, he retorted, his words a familiar refrain that only fueled my frustration. Fed up with his self-centered attitude, I proposed a compromise. Why don't we transfer my father to a local hospital? That way, I can balance caring for him with household chores. Fine, do that, he agreed, seemingly unfazed. But in exchange, I expect us to accommodate my father once he's discharged. We'll need to monitor his health with regular doctor visits, I stipulated. At the mention of living together, my husband's face contorted in clear disgust. No chance, we're not living together, Bob insisted firmly. Then let me go back to his place, I countered. In the end, Bob's response was a dismissive, do whatever you want, signaling the end of the conversation. I promptly informed my workplace, completed the necessary procedures, and returned to my parents' home. The daily visits to the hospital proved more taxing than I had anticipated, but my father's resilience inspired me to soldier on without complaint. Despite his best efforts, his condition showed little improvement, and as 2 months slipped by, I realized I needed to return home soon. With my father's discharge still uncertain and the seasons shifting, I knew it was time to swap out my wardrobe and fetch some fresh belongings. Assessing the situation, I decided to make a brief trip back home. However, upon my return, the sight that greeted me wasn't that of my husband. Instead, a woman's voice echoed from deep within the house. Bob, are you back? I called out upon my return, only to be met with silence. Perplexed, I repeated his name, but still, there was no response. Startled by the unexpected turn of events, I stood frozen in shock. Finally, a voice from within the house responded. Bob, is that you? As the realization sank in that the voice wasn't mine, the owner of the voice cautiously emerged from the room. You're not Bob. Who are you? She stammered, visibly taken aback. Confidently, I retorted, who are you? What are you doing in someone else's house? Her response left me reeling. Someone else's house? This is my house, she declared firmly, sending a wave of panic through me. Rushing to the porch, I frantically checked the nameplate. confirming that this was indeed my house. Confusion engulfed me as I struggled to make sense of the situation. Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, my husband sauntered in casually from the entrance. "What's going on here?" I demanded, my tone laced with fury. His expression mirrored my confusion as he met my gaze. "Why are you here?" he questioned, his words cutting through the chaos. "I came back to grab some clothes, but who is that woman?" I shot back, my frustration mounting. "It's your fault for not taking care of me. She'll be handling the house from now on," he stated matter-of-factly, dropping a bombshell. "What do you mean?" "We got divorced 2 months ago," he revealed, shattering the last semblance of normalcy. "To divorce? What are you talking about?" "I haven't heard anything about this," I protested, stunned by the revelation. "Of course you haven't. I made all the decisions myself," my husband replied coolly, his tone devoid of remorse. What do you mean?" I stammered, struggling to comprehend the gravity of his words. "We're getting divorced. I already started making arrangements. And as for the house, I plan to sell it soon. I'll be taking the proceeds as alimony," he declared, his words hitting me like a freight train. "But this house isn't solely yours. It's in both our names. I'm entitled to half of it," I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. "It's your own fault for neglecting your responsibilities around the house. Give me all the proceeds from the sale," he retorted, his words dripping with contempt. "I haven't even signed the divorce papers yet, and yet you're already treating us as divorced. Regardless, if that's what you want, then fine. Gather your belongings and leave immediately," I asserted, my voice tinged with disbelief and frustration. "That's a selfish thing to say," my patience wore thin, snapping at his callousness. "You don't understand anything," I added, my tone firm with conviction. He regarded me with skepticism. "What's left to discuss?" "Property division," he scoffed. "It's your own fault for failing in your duties as a wife. Even if you try to fight it legally, you'll lose. It's a waste of time," he dismissed callously. "Property division. So now you know about that term. Are you mocking me?" I retorted, my indignation mounting. "That's enough. If that's how you want it, I'll gather my things and go," I declared, resolved to put an end to this conversation. I retreated to my room, swiftly packing my belongings. As I busied myself, a sweet voice called out from the other room, "Bob." "Who's this older woman?" "She's just my ex-wife, here to collect her things," Bob's voice explained from the living room. "Ah, good. I was afraid she'd demand you back," the woman responded in a jesting tone, followed by laughter. Their laughter echoed through the house, piercing through my heart. She knew he was married and yet pursued him anyway. "Just you wait," I muttered under my breath as I packed my belongings, a vow forming in my mind. Returning to my parents' home with my belongings, I wasted no time. I visited the local office and then sought out a detective agency to request an investigation into his infidelity. There was much to be done, and I braced myself for the busy days ahead. Weeks later, my phone rang. Answering it, I was greeted by Bob's enraged voice. "Hey, you, what have you done?" "The alimony you demanded, $100,000. That's outrageous. I've consulted a lawyer about your actions. I'll settle for $100,000. Isn't that generous enough?" he demanded, his words dripping with anger and disbelief. "Huh? Where did your sense of financial responsibility disappear to? Are you going crazy from the shock of our divorce?" I could almost see him standing defiantly, his arrogance fueling my determination to bring him down a peg. Taking a deliberate detour, I responded, "If you refuse to pay, that's your decision. But mark my words, someone as concerned with appearances as you will end up paying alimony." As predicted, Bob's frustration boiled over. "Stop talking nonsense. You sound like you're eager for alimony. A wife shouldn't have to pay a penny to her ex-husband. Just because you're single now doesn't mean you should resent married people. How greedy can one woman be? That's why we got divorced." "Wife, huh? So you're already considering that other woman your wife?" I retorted sharply. "Perhaps you should watch what you say before mocking others. Remember, I could take you to court if I wanted to." "What? What did you just say?" The app seemed momentarily stunned by the mention of court. "Hey, what crime are you accusing me of? I married my current wife after our divorce. I haven't done anything wrong," Bob retorted defensively. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I've already conducted an investigation into your affair. I hired a detective and I have all the evidence, so don't bother trying to deny it. I countered firmly. What? Bob fell silent, but I pressed on. You've been involved with her for over a year now, haven't you? However, unfortunately, having an affair isn't considered a crime, I stated matter-of-factly. Then why did you mention taking me to court? You just said cheating isn't a crime, Bob protested, confusion evident in his voice. Don't you realize that filing for divorce without the other party's consent is a crime? I responded pointedly. As Bob remained silent, I pressed forward. What you did amounts to forgery of a legal document, a serious offense. Did you really think that wouldn't catch up with you? Using someone else's signature to submit divorce papers without their consent is clearly a reckless move. That's because you abandoned me for months. That's why I filed for divorce. I did nothing wrong. It's all on you, Bob retorted defensively. Really? You conveniently filed for divorce just 1 week after I moved back to my parents' house. According to the private investigator's report, you claimed I abandoned you for months. Does that make sense to you? We were already divorced, so legally, I wasn't your wife anymore. I countered, my voice edged with frustration. Bob was at a loss for words, but I pressed on. Seriously, what kind of grown man blames his divorce on his spouse not taking care of him? Get real? Take care of yourself. I'm not your personal caretaker. But a wife is supposed to take care of her husband. How else were we supposed to make ends meet? Bob interjected, clinging to his outdated beliefs. What era are you living in? Your salary is pretty much the same as mine, and we split the bills 50-50. Who do you think should be thankful for the life you've been living? I snapped, unable to contain my frustration. I wasn't stopping now. Without waiting for his response, I laid all my cards on the table. I'll sue you for forgery if you don't cough up $100,000 as compensation. If you want to avoid that, just pay up. And don't think your mistress is off the hook. But make sure to get proper compensation from her too. Plus, I'll take half of the house sale and our joint savings as part of the property division. Whoa, hold on. If things go that way, I'll be left with almost nothing. She doesn't even work, and I have to support her, Bob pleaded, panic seeping into his voice. Do you think I care? I can sue you for forgery and for infidelity. Should I just do both if you're going to keep whining? I threatened. Fear evident in his silence, Bob abruptly hung up. Always concerned about his public image, he chose to pay the compensation without taking it to court. He ended up having to pay the compensation claims from his mistress as well. Between the property division and the compensation for his mistress, Bob was left with nothing. He struggled to make ends meet, living each day on the edge. To make matters worse, word of his affair spread at his company, subjecting him to uncomfortable stares and judgmental whispers from his colleagues. Unable to quit his job, Bob began to vent his frustration on his new wife. Their once loving relationship quickly deteriorated, devolving into constant arguments. Their relationship was now reportedly at its worst. Meanwhile, I requested a transfer to a branch near my parents' house. My father was discharged from the hospital without any complications, and we settled into a peaceful life together. I am committed to showing my filial piety by taking good care of him from now on.